Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Checked Before. This time, peak performance. We know you're used to that. You've been listening to this show for years. Peak performance. Speaking of peak performance, this weekend, the mothership, it's back. It's All Been Done Radio Hour. Get there. Check them out. Stream it on YouTube. It's All Been Checked Before. No, It's All Been Done Radio Hour is back. You know, I know we've mentioned it before. They got a thing called Universe Journey on there. It's kind of Star Trek-y. Kinda in heavy quotation marks. Check it out this weekend. It's November 11th. Get on board. They've had more guest stars than ever lately. The show just keeps getting better, and you can see those faces right in your grill. Check it out live. You can check it out later, but you know what? Check it out live. It's a lot more fun. It's 5 o'clock on a Saturday. What are you doing? Get ready for your night. Get the wheels greased with the It's All Been Done Radio Hour crew. And that will lead to peak performance, which is what we're talking about here on It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
And Jimmy-Jerome. Ignore that podcast I accidentally set off. We're here to talk about the penultimate episode of The Next Generation Season 2, Peak Performance. First impressions.
I liked it. Sure, I get into the usual quibbles. I definitely have, but overall I liked it. You know, I'm a sucker for Balance of Terror type. For whatever reason, I just love it when the two ships together, even when they're face to face, which isn't necessary in space. But regardless, I enjoyed a lot of that stuff. Some of the crew camaraderie stuff was interesting. I don't know that I loved it, but it was fun. I liked it.
I was excited about it from the beginning. Once I realized what the premise was, I didn't really feel disappointed about it by the end. So
yeah, I thought it was pretty darn good. There were some great character moments. Mm-hmm. It probably helped that we watched this and the season finale back to back.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt the reflections on this one.
No, so now I feel like even more positive about this one.
But that's for next week.
Yeah, next week. Starting at the beginning, we had, for another episode, a familiar face at the tactical station. I was very excited. We had, what was his name? Dietrich Bader last time from the Carey Show?
Yeah.
And this week we had Glenn Morshower working tactical. You probably know him from so many things. I'd probably know him best from 24. More recently, he's been in The Resident. He was in Bloodline. He was in Friday Night Lights, I'm pretty sure. He was Burke, and he will do a second episode of The Next Generation as a different character.
Okay.
Named Orton. He'll do an episode of Voyager. He's a navigator in Star Trek Generations, and he did an episode of Star Trek Enterprise as yet another character. But he's one of those TV actors that you've probably seen in lots of things, but maybe you didn't know his name. So Data got to be first officer in this episode, for a while anyway. He is the second officer, so that makes sense. To me, I don't know, maybe it's the benefit of having seen all of the rest of Data's story at this point. It feels like it's not quite earned yet, but it will be. And he will eventually, long time down the road, be tapped to be Picard's first officer when Riker leaves. But that's so far in the future at this point.
Isn't this all very far in the future?
See it already. The seeds of the Picard-Data friendship and their partnership.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen will like that when he hears back in the recording someday.
I liked
sorry.
talking about reputation meaning nothing if it was never tested. I guess he doesn't consider that stratagem game a test of his battle readiness.
It didn't seem like it. At first I was like, oh, that's Worf being a Klingon or whatever, however you want to call that. Worf being Worf is what I should say. But then he was right, because that guy didn't seem all that great at anything other than that game.
Cerna was played by Roy Brocksmith, character actor best known for Total Recall, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, Tango and Cash. In terms of Star Trek, he will do an episode of Deep Space Nine as a different character. They just put new makeup on him and they forget.
When he came in, also, I thought he was going to be more of a comedic character, because he was very exaggerated.
Yeah.
And then it was just like, no, he's a jerk. But
well, I mean, I think there was some comedic value in his performance a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It became clear that he was serious about what he was saying, however, and that made him an intentional villain. But at the same time, I think when you pull yourself back a little bit and don't really get your feelings hurt along with the characters, it is pretty funny. I mean, the idea that he was saying, some of the things he was saying.
Yeah, I don't think he was a villain, but he was an antagonist.
Yes, right. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, there's a difference, because he was trying to help him, and he did have respect for them when they did the right thing. He just got in the way a little bit. Was he funny on Seinfeld, Steven?
Oh, was he on Seinfeld?
He was.
I'm trying to remember who he was. He seems so familiar, and I can't place him.
He did.
He was in the episode The Nose Job. He played the landlord.
Nose Job.
Now that I'm looking at him from the Seinfeld episode, yeah, he looks. Yeah, I remember him now. I thought he did fine, and yeah, I agree with you, Jimmy, that it kind of had the mash. They kind of won him over eventually, but even then, as he was leaving, it was kind of begrudgingly. He was a fun character.
He was almost a Commodore from the original series, but slightly less combative.
Yeah, he had the one thing where he's like, as the I don't know if he called himself the game master or what he said. I order you to do this, and Picard's like, I order you. No, shut up. What is happening? Because I was like, wait a minute, is that a rank that outranks the captain?
I think he said Starfleet Observer.
Yeah, I'm like, how is that?
No, that's not going to outrank the captain.
Did he order him? I thought it was more.
He tried to.
Yeah, he was using Commodore speak, and it's like, no, you don't outrank him.
There was, I mean, apart from that, he wasn't. I mean, I noted at the beginning during the cold open there that Riker gave it one of those. I think they played up his jovialness or joviality for later in the episode, but just that glance that he gave Picard at the beginning, that like, well, we got another Commodore, ha ha ha, you know.
It did lead to that scene I liked. I don't even know if I made a note of this. It's coming back to me now, where he had it in for Riker so badly that when Picard's like, "Can I talk to you? What's the deal?" I was like, "Thank you. You're speaking for Jean-Luc.
Yeah.
What is your problem?" So there was a lot of really good Picard-Riker moments in this episode.
But I guess I brought that up to say that he wasn't really quite that same kind of character who was just like the Commodore character from the original series, where it's just like you want to just. Why the hell isn't he just booted off the ship kind of bad?
Yeah, they were all
like somebody shut him up because he's going to get everybody killed, something.
Yep.
This is more just him being, as Jimmy said, an antagonist, just a little ribbing.
I did like Pulaski calling him a charming man. I think she's going out strong.
I really think they owed it to her to bring her back at least once.
Yeah.
In the next 5 seasons and 4 films.
And especially to me, she's a legacy. I mean, she was great on the original, and
she never appears on Star Trek again after this. This is after the episode that we're going to review next week. That was just it. She's just gone, and we never see Pulaski.
That makes no sense. Why wouldn't you? Something.
Diana Muldaur, but she's still with us, right? Or isn't she?
Well, maybe that would.
Yeah, she doesn't have. There's no death date on IMDb.
Hey,
but
so there's still a chance. There's still a chance.
There could be. She could show up in Star Trek Picard. That'd be
exactly.
Great.
That would be awesome.
But this was one of her final credits. She doesn't have a ton of credits after this. In fact, her last television credit is Batman the Animated Series 92 to 93.
Who was she in that?
Dr. Leslie Tompkins for 5 episodes.
Huh.
She's got a great voice.
Early in this episode, can't remember which character says it. I think it's Picard. Says Starfleet's not military. Its mission is exploration. Mm-hmm. And the only reason he agrees for the military exercise is because the Borg poses a threat. To me, I was thinking about this quite a bit. There's a 70-year history of Star Trek that we really don't see hardly anything from the end of Star Trek 6, well, really the beginning of Generations, all the way up to the start of the Next Generation. We learn a little bit about the history with the Enterprise C and stuff, which we'll get to later in Star Trek Next Gen. But that period is basically known for being a peaceful period. We made peace with the Klingons at the end of Star Trek 6, and things just go swimmingly for 70 years, and we don't have Star Trek. And it's interesting to me, when Next Gen picks up, things are so much better and more idealized and peaceful than they were in the original series, and that's nice, but it didn't last long, because by the end of Next Gen, things are going downhill fast, and Deep Space Nine gets so dark, and there's all this war, and ships are getting torn apart. Even Picard's time, it's Star Trek Picard's time. It's really dark, a lot of war, a lot of death, and so it feels very foreboding to me when Picard talks about Star Trek being, or Starfleet being for exploration, not military. It feels like, yeah, that's how you grew up, but buddy, it's only going to last so long, and that era is about over. Unfortunately. Yeah,
I like that, just that little drop in about the Borgs, because it was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh crap, this makes total sense. Because I think it helped with something that Worf said about the game, which we can get into, but he said there's no stakes. And that's what, and I think somebody said it about, well, maybe Worf said it about this too, more or less, when he was like, those guys never really test it in a real situation. They test it in a game. So that gave it more stakes for me, even though obviously they weren't going to blow each other up or whatever. And then it does turn into stakes later, but.
Well, this is something they really fought with Gene Roddenberry about in the original and early seasons of Next Gen, is he didn't want anybody in Starfleet to not get along. He didn't want them to have that internal conflict. And shows without that just aren't very interesting. And so the writers were always pushing back on that. And yeah, Voyager, there's quite a bit of exploration alongside the dark militaristic parts of it. But there are dark militaristic parts of Voyager. Like I said, most of Deep Space Nine is dark and militaristic. So it's Starfleet. I mean, I do think Star Trek is best when there's exploration mixed in with the heavier stuff. But you need that heavier stuff to make television compelling. That's just storytelling 101.
If it was just about war or whatever, yeah, it would TOS definitely wouldn't have flown. I mean, that it was a different time. But I agree with you, Jamie. I think there's got to be some conflict, whether it's whatever that invading force is and why ever they're invading. It doesn't necessarily have to be God, now I'm going back to 60, episode of combat. But it doesn't have to be a war. It doesn't have to be space war every week. I think there's already a film series about those kinds of wars. But yeah, I think, again, that's why I like that Borg drop it. It was like, oh yeah, they're still out there. That threat's still out there. So we're going to be exploring. We're going to run into them again. We know this is going to happen. Let's stay sharp.
I mean, the Borg are a huge part of Voyager. They're definitely front and center in Star Trek Picard. They're not going away. But I agree, not every Star Trek needs to have a threat the level of the Borg or the Dominion.
Do you mean every Star Trek property, or just any self-contained?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think every Star Trek property needs a huge threat that kills trillions, the way we are heading towards on Star Trek in the next few years as we'll keep watching. But I do think there needs to be some conflict. I think the original series found a good balance where there were stakes in episodes. Not as much as I would have liked, because they were afraid to shake up their status quo or threaten a main character too heavily. But I do think there's a nice balance to be found there. I think Discovery does a pretty good job of balancing that. The mission is Riker's getting his own ship. Yay, because he was offered that in the past. And he gets to pick his crew. Except Data. Data's off limits because Picard wants him as XO. Then we get a little montage of him going to different crewmen. And it's kind of fun, and it's got some character moments, but also, it's also some weirdness there. Geordi plays super hard to get about, oh, yeah, you're going to fail, whatever. And then Riker's like, join my crew. And he's like, yeah, I already packed my bag.
No, I love this is that I love the assembling the crew montage of heist movies and so on. And even though some of it is a little formulaic, I still love the way they did it here, certainly.
See, I thought Geordi was a little too weird about it, and then I really didn't care for the Worf scene as much, even though there were some good moments. Like, I laughed when he said he was done with the model and he just shoves it in a drawer without doing anything. But the whole conversation felt very similar to the Geordi thing, where he's like, oh, I don't want to be on your crew, you're not going to win. Be on my crew? Okay, sure. I don't know, it just felt a little false to me. And then adding Wesley for educational observation, even though he wasn't doing any observing. He was fully participating as a full-fledged crewman. I don't know. It just felt odd. It felt a little off.
I also didn't like Worf's decor in his quarters.
No?
I thought it was the drabbest of all crew people I can remember. But
I'm kind of annoyed. Why didn't Riker take Troy? He knows her value. They're very close. She should have been part of his crew.
That's a good point.
Though I'm fine that he didn't take Pulaski, even though they're buddies, because you probably wouldn't need a doctor. It's fine. But Troy would have insight.
Well, if they wanted to win, and, we get this whole build-up to how they're the underdogs and they can't win. And then it's like, yeah, but they went ahead and cheated, so it didn't matter. But as they corrected, it's not cheating, it's improvising.
So I had a big problem with that scene, too, where Riker's all mad at Wesley for cheating, and then immediately drops and is like, okay, good job.
Me too. I felt the same way. I was like,
as far as cheating and so forth goes, it seems as though some of it is legitimate forms of espionage that would take place in a battle of some sort, even if there is some sort of competition being put forth where you have superior odds. For example, Worf being able to use his familiarity with Starfleet to begin with should seem like cheating if you are doing that. But with an enemy like the Borg, even if you think back like some of their interactions, this isn't that far off from something that would have happened. They could send they send envoys over under the guise of doing whatever the hell they seem to be doing, right? And they seem to be doing something that might be benign, might be unimportant, but they could be getting important information, and they could be stealing technology of some sort. I mean, it's not out of the question.
I don't have a problem with Wesley bringing his science experiment on board. I had a problem with Riker being all holier than thou and then immediately dropping it.
Okay, yeah.
I would have rather Riker just like, Wes, that's brilliant, and went with it from the beginning than have that weird flip-flop.
I kept wondering, well, what are the actual parameters of this game? Because it's like, is the idea that, oh, hey, Riker, figure out how to, and maybe that was part of it, was figure out how to win when you're very outmanned, which is something every Starfleet captain has to know. But it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was presented that way, but I guess it
wasn't quite that. But
going back, it feels that way. But and also all of the cheating, quote unquote, led to the later thing of, oh, it paid off. So cheaters do prosper, or whatever you call them.
Are you a little bit disappointed we never got to see who would have won in Riker versus Picard?
I enjoyed what was being set up for what it was. I was excited to see just this competition. If they had done a movie, a couple of episodes of just the details of what was doing, even, I mean, the respect of them, quote unquote, cheating. These are things these are valid tactics. You would want to know how you go about doing something like that. And I was, as I was writing that note, the Ferengi showed up, and I was actually really disappointed at first. But I mean, I thought it played out interestingly in the end. And, in some senses, it's a bait and switch when you have things like that. You get two powerful characters on the same side, or two characters who you shouldn't necessarily see battling in something. This sort of thing comes up in, comic books or whatever. Yeah, and there's usually some sort of out like that because you can't quite do it, or you have to have something to balance them or keep the question unanswered to some extent, or
You just made me think of what I think. Either I don't know if it's what I would have hoped would have happened or what I think would have happened, but I think it's in Data's answer when he's like, "I wasn't battling to win. I was battling for a stalemate," which is what I think they both would have done. They would not. They would have refused to be bested, but they would have probably tried not to overly best their counterpart.
I disagree. I think Riker was coming at 100%, and I think Picard was thrilled by that and was going to give it back. And I still think Picard would have won because he was so overmatched, or Riker was so outmatched. But I think Picard would have delighted in the challenge, and I think Riker delighted in giving him that challenge, even though he knew he was going to lose. I mean, the fact that Riker challenged the alien to a game, I can't remember his name, I'm not even going to try, challenges him to a game.
His name is William Riker.
Lose, and invites Geordi to watch him lose. Like, Riker kind of gets a kick out of trying, even though it's a no-win scenario.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Picard would have won that, but I still would have liked to have seen it played out a little further.
I was, as I said, I guess I was satisfied with what they gave us as far as there being. This is a gambit by Riker that was very effective. Picard reacted to that. He was a little taken aback, but at the same time, he was determined. He gave something else, but I liked the back and forth of it for a bit. It didn't matter who actually, was going to win in that sense.
And like I said at the top, any balance of terror thing where it's like, or Rathacon for that matter, I guess I should throw that in here too, because that's in that same pantheon, if you will. Where it's like, okay, what's he doing? Okay, I'm doing this. Well, he's doing this. He doesn't know that what I know. That he knows that I know that he knows that I know, kind of thing. So yeah, I enjoyed all that stuff. So that stuff I was totally in. If the Ferengi never show up, I'm still all in on that. The Ferengi, and in fact, when the Ferengi showed up, I was like, "Is this?" I had to rewind, and it wasn't even that late yet. It was early in the evening when I was watching this one. I was like, "Did I miss something? Is that wait? Did they say that's a simulation?" Oh, and then to be fair, when the Ferengi explained it, I'm like, "Nope, that's very Ferengi. That's perfect." At first I was like, "Oh, I don't need this extra complication," but I was like, "Nope." Made total sense to me. Yeah. And then it created the two of them doing another gambit working together. So
yeah, that's what I was getting at before. It's just I I was like, come on. I didn't need to force something in here like this, but then it made complete sense. I bought it after they got to the reason why they were there, and just the way that they had to play through that made up for it.
And I wrote down "war game for real!" exclamation points. But again, I still enjoyed it. And I meant to say this at the very top. As soon as they say we're going to have to disconnect the weapon system, we all know that's going to be a problem later. Immediately, you know that's going to be an issue later.
I should have thought of that, and I didn't.
And so it's like Ultimate Computer. We're like, we can disconnect our computer. This computer's got it. It's like, bad idea. Bad idea.
Did you recognize the head Ferengi?
I did not.
He looked familiar.
He was played by Armin Shimmerman once again, who played a different Ferengi in The Last Outpost, that first Ferengi episode, as well as the gift box face.
Maybe he got promoted.
Troy.
Okay.
Of course, he's best known for playing a lead character, Ferengi, on Deep Space Nine named Quark. Yep. And we will see Quark in an episode of Next Gen, but this was his last Star Trek credit not playing Quark.
Okay.
So lots and lots of him to come in the future, but Quark is a very different Ferengi than these Ferengi.
Yeah.
So,
just to complete my trifecta of old original series references, the other episode it made me think of was at the beginning when they said, the laser blast won't do any real damage, but we'll calculate damages and casualties, which immediately made me think of A Taste of Armageddon. So I didn't know if we were going to Taste of Armageddon. I wrote it down immediately: Taste of Armageddon, Ultimate Computer, Balance of Terror. And those are three, for me, really good episodes of the original series. So that's not, I wrote at the beginning before I saw the rest of the episode. So but it delivered on a lot of that. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't think it lives up to those, but...
No, I wouldn't rank it above any.
And it's not a bad episode.
No.
While we're on guest real quick with Armin, we had a tactician, is David L. Lander, who's best known for playing Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was him, and then I looked it up. I'm like, that is Squiggy.
That is Squiggy. So that was pretty cool. And then Leslie Neal played Ensign Nagel, who I'm pretty sure is that... I wrote down, who's this blonde on Riker's ship that seems super friendly and knows them really well, even though...
We've never seen her.
We've never seen her. And we'll never see her after this. It's a one-episode part.
Right. And
I don't know if it was meant to be familiar so much as it was that she was just a crewman that they know, and she's probably kind of geeking out for being that close to the senior officers.
Well, and that makes sense, Keith, because at first when the one scene where she gets her most lines, it's the two of them, and she's like right in the middle, like a Wes Anderson shot. And I'm like, and then she's turned around just looking at them. I'm like, is this just an extra who's like, I'm getting on this week? And then I'm like, oh, okay. And then she comes down and does that again kind of later, gets in between them. This was no surprise. I loved her. But
she was great.
Speaking of extras,
yep.
Did you see the engineering person who looked like Sonia Gomez in the background?
No, I missed that.
Yes, I did.
I actually looked it up and tried to find out, but I didn't see anything mentioned about it. I mean, my brief little search about it, but she looked a lot like her and could have been her, but she just didn't have any parts.
The actress isn't credited for this episode.
Yeah.
I thought that too immediately, Keith. Leslie Neal was on Seinfeld. She was on the apartment. So it's when Elaine's thinking of moving into the apartment above Jerry, but she flirts with George at a party where George is wearing a wedding ring because he heard if you wear a wedding ring, girls will talk to you.
Oh my God.
And he meets a perfect girl and she's like, it's a shame you're married. So she was on that episode. And it took me a second. I'm like, oh no, that is her. But yeah, she didn't have a ton of acting credits after this though.
No.
But I enjoyed her.
There were some great character moments in this. I like Worf betting on Riker to at least make it so far in the game. Mm-hmm. And I liked the Pulaski-Data relationship. It almost felt like it paid off a bit in terms of she's still going to make fun of him and bust his chops because that's the relationship. But we finally see like actual adoration for him. Mm-hmm. Like she's convinced he's going to beat the alien and shocked when he loses very quickly. And then she goes to the effort of, she calls him infallible, which I thought was going a little far because he's not infallible.
Right.
But, and he seemed to agree that he should be infallible, which I was like, okay, back off, calm down a bit. But I liked that relationship of getting a payoff now where we see her actually standing up for him and caring about him. even though she still has that way she treats him.
Oh yeah, I love the her going to Picard and trying to explain to why they needed his help, and just even the way that it's almost like she had to reverse roles and explain to him how to approach things, in the sense of, even if you don't think that he's exactly human, the approximation is human-like enough that you need to approach it in that way and do something that, you know.
I thought for sure that guy was fixing the game somehow.
Me too.
And that's what when Data was like, "Oh, I'm looking in to see what I did wrong," and I appreciated what they were like. Well, sometimes you do everything right and it still doesn't work out. And I like that.
For a moment, where did we see that quote recently? The Picard quote. I swear I've seen somebody. Maybe it was somebody else who posted it. I thought one of you mentioned it in the past episode, but when I saw it come up, I was like, "Oh my god, there's that!" And nothing. Okay, so I must have just seen it somewhere else. Maybe there was a
similar quote that was said before.
I saw it was like a meme or something with Picard actually saying those words, and it was, I guess I just saw it on a different page somewhere.
I think it's a great quote, and it led to a really nice character moment between Picard and Data.
It did, yeah. And then again, I actually liked the end when he's like, "Well, he didn't understand that I was playing for that stalemate." So I like that better than that guy fixing it. It actually is more interesting. But I was convinced.
Yes.
I was just like, when are we going to get to this guy was fixed it? I was convinced of that until the very, very end. So
it was a great payoff in Data's final line of like, "I did not win. I busted him up." I mean,
that was great.
That actually got me. It's interesting that they, I don't know, the term put over, or rather elevated the claims they were making at the beginning of the episode. You think, okay, sure, an android's going to kill him. I like actually sort of the payoff is that not he is that good at it, but also just the improvisation that the Data needed for that. It seems like somewhere between poker and chess in that sense, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to know exactly how it worked.
Me think of the chess grandmaster playing the computer type real life scenario.
But the implication there is that the predicting what your opponent's going to do is based on the premise that your opponent is competent. I think that's what like the beginner's luck thing that happens in poker. Going back to that suggestion, when somebody's really good at it, they've been playing the game for long enough, they're used to playing against other experts, and they assume certain things, they assume certain knowledge that the other player has to have, so they can identify why they're doing what they're doing, or why they're most likely to do what they're doing. And then if they incorrectly assess the skill level, then it could be anybody just doing nonsense.
Yeah. It's kind of like the Rocky line. He doesn't know it's a show. He thinks it's a fight. So very similar thing.
Going on my theme of great character moments, I loved Picard vehemently defending Riker to the alien.
Yeah.
I also liked seeing Troy counsel Data. It made him feel more human and more part of things. And I guess that's the only reason not to put her on Riker's ship, is to give her that scene. Yeah, and
I feel like I've come around on Troy's one-to-one talks. Like, she is the counselor of the ship. And
she should.
and I feel like they've gotten more natural, even if sometimes her language starts from a very, I'm a counselor and I'm using counselor speak. But I think she conveys it effectively, and it creates nice moments like that. So I think and maybe we don't get there if we don't have some of maybe it doesn't feel that way if it hasn't happened for the first season and a half. And now I think it's really paying off. When we get to the bridge of the ship, the Hathaway, I loved all the original series movie graphics. Yep. It was too small to just be a reused Enterprise bridge, but it made me think maybe it was one of the other ships they used briefly in the That's what I was trying to figure out. Configured it. And I didn't look it up, but I thought it was cool. I loved the look of it. I liked that it was smaller. And Did you actually use the original series communicator sound? Yes, I specifically wrote that down. I was like, yes! I did want to know why that ship was just sitting there in that state. Like, it wasn't destroyed. Right. But Starfleet never, towed it home for repairs. They just left it sitting out here half beat up. Which seems like somebody would have salvaged it or... The Ferengi? Yeah.
That could be why they were in the area, but...
I like the look of it when it just looked like it had the 2 nacelles. I didn't like the 4 nacelles. But when it had the 2 and looked kind of flat, I really dug that. And then every time I would go to the 4, I was like, just cut those off. Those aren't necessary. I liked Worf just ripping the optical cable from the ceiling. And
yeah.
Where do I get cable? Here you go.
Was it in that state because you think that it had already been stripped for parts, or because it was because of the modifications they were doing? Was it rats? Space rats?
If it had been stripped for parts, you'd think there would be no dilithium crystal pieces left because dilithium's really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was in a battle, pretty well damaged, but it didn't look battle scarred. It didn't have holes.
Right.
It didn't look like the crew was all killed on it. So I don't know how it got. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense to me that it was in that specific state and in that place.
So was it towed there? Was it that they fly it there to meet them?
It sounded like it wasn't towed there.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was obviously in flying condition.
Barely.
Yeah.
Impulse, not warp, so it can come from far.
Oh, hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. It just didn't make sense to me. Mm-mm. Okay, one of my favorite random bits was when Riker and Picard are talking on the view screens before the Ferengi show up and everything goes down. And there's a crewman on Riker's bridge that stares at the camera like, oh, Picard's on the camera. I'm going to look at him as I walk past. That was definitely felt like an extra that wasn't coached well enough. I also liked the scene where Data was talking about Riker about, well, his tactics are this, but he knows I know his tactics are this. And it just, to me, it was very much, I can clearly not choose the cup in front of you from the Princess Bride poison scene. Does this predate the Princess Bride?
I don't think so.
I think it might be a little after.
It might be before Friends, though.
1987, so this is after. This is after.
Yeah.
But it felt like that scene very much. With the Great Wallace Shawn, who will also play a reoccurring Ferengi on Deep Space Nine.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I guess I should have brought this up when we were talking about the alien character. But I like that he admitted he was wrong at the end about the tactical stuff.
Yeah.
It gave him a little more depth and complexity and made him a sympathetic character.
Yeah, it made him less of a Commodore and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Worf says there's always a chance. I think that's about whether the Hathaway can win, which I think it's the second straight week he's essentially echoed Spock. So I really appreciate that. I always like hearing that. I mentioned the no stakes thing, and I was like, yeah, there's no stakes. And I know they were talking about not only the war games, but also the Stratagema game.
Yeah.
Which it was like Stratego, or I felt like they were mushing the word Stratego and something else. But I was like, oh man, there's no stakes, of course. And then Worf's like, I bet on you. I'm like, that's exactly why gambling is a thing. It makes everything more interesting. This episode, and including this terrible game, Stratagema, which it's a terrible spectator sport.
I think the derivation was simply the word stratagem.
Yeah.
But, with an A.
I think we should have had Worf being salty at least twice more in the episode about Riker costing him the money.
I agree. I completely agree.
That would have been great.
Yeah.
And we talked about that the scene where Data's like, I busted him up or whatever he says, and everyone laughs, and it feels very natural and real, and everybody's great. Counter that with when everyone's watching. If you look at the extras around them when they're playing the first time, and I don't blame them. It doesn't look like an exciting game, and they're trying to muster like, "Oh, get him done!" And I'm sure they were like, "What am I cheering for them to do?" And they're like, "We don't really know." And you can see it because the extras are like, "Get him!" Even though I wrote down it's an advanced Connect 4. Is that essentially what it is? It looks like a hyper version of Connect 4.
I'd buy that.
I wish I'd watched it more closely to see if I could even figure out if they've even bothered to make rules for it. Like as far as the writing of it goes, or as far as the production of it, did they really? I mean, you just see all the numbers going up, and even the conclusion about Cerna won with more moves than Riker, which. And they said it, Riker only got 23 moves, as though that meant. I mean, I don't know.
With more moves, or were they points? I thought they were points.
I think it was moves.
Well, they certainly said that Riker only had 23 moves, and that was his score. So I don't know what that means exactly.
Oh, was that the score? I missed that. I thought
I saw that correlation, which is why I was like, okay. I don't know about. It could be another one of those translation issues. As far as somebody wrote this script, somebody. Sent it off to the visuals department, and they decided to do this with the game, and have the score seem to match the number of moves that were being made, or something. I don't know. So
I was trying to figure that out too, because they talked about. It sounded like if you don't reach a certain, if the two players are close enough, the game can't end. So I'll equate this to pickup basketball, which is usually you would play to 10 by 1. But you had to win by 2. So you couldn't win 10-9. You had to win 10-8. So I think it was like that in a way, except on a much more complicated level. That's all I could figure out.
Yeah, Worf also the bet that he was making, if I recall, was that he needed to make the sixth strata or something along those lines. The platform or some word that meant that some stage which means I don't know, another round, I guess.
That's what in that sense it sounds more like a heavyweight fight. So we've got you lasting 6 rounds against the champ. So if you could hang in there, and he didn't, obviously.
Memory Alpha says the players attempt to move their game pieces to change the color of the panels to their assigned color, while their opponent attempts to do likewise. When one player completely changes the color of the panels to his assigned color, the game is won. It can't be that simple, because just like trying to change them all to your color and being faster than the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys, they attach the electrodes or whatever to their hands, and they're moving their hands all the time, but is it their brains that are doing the work, or is it their fingers? So is it a dexterity thing?
I think it had to be the fingers. I think the fingers were also. I mean, the fact that they were. I mean, it should just be like electrodes to the head. If it were anything just mental,
right?
I mean, they had individual leads going to their fingertips. So
shouldn't that give Data an advantage? Shouldn't he be faster?
You would think that's what some of that was very puzzling.
Speed. It's got to be strategy, which makes sense for what they talk about the character. We should ask the writer of this episode, David Kemper, who wrote one other Next Gen episode that we'll get to in early season 3, as well as an episode of Voyager, time and again.
I think it's our alien guy says that Riker has unusual cunning, which was the title of my sex tape. Then I think it's
Are you
Picard.
sure it was unusual cunning instead of unusual?
Nope. And credits.
We're getting there because the next. I can't remember if it's Picard saying about Riker or Riker saying about Picard. He's doing the Kuma maneuver. Also the title of my sex tape. Finally, then the other one says, "Oh, it's the Chalupian maneuver." Also the title of my sex tape. Also a specialty item at Taco Bell, the Chalupian.
Oh my God!
Not the Chalupian maneuver, just the Chalupian.
The Chalupian is used in the Chalupian maneuver, though.
Oh, okay.
But seriously, I love that sort of thing where they come up with these names for sword maneuvers and names for chess moves and names for battle positions, and just doesn't mean anything, maybe not, but it gives off the impression that they studied it in a certain way, and
it makes it a lived-in world, more of a lived-in world.
Yeah.
The alien keeps saying Picard, retreat or die, and I wrote down, some master strategist, that's your entire plan? Retreat or die? Really? That's it? That's all you can come up with?
It's effective.
First. Trust me, that's been my fighting strategy my entire life. Essentially retreat, as you can tell, I'm still here. Live to fight another day, or actually live to not fight another day. My last note is I think Riker mentions pulling a rabbit out of a hat. And this is a question I ask all the time. Are people still going to be pulling rabbits out of hats in the 24th century?
Oh.
Yeah, but they use a transporter technology to beam the rabbit into the hat.
And it gets past the biofilter, I'm going to next episode now.
That's an interesting point. And that's something that I don't think I'd thought about before. We come up with these, we mentioned those sorts of anachronistic things. And there are plenty of expressions that we have that we don't really break down. We learn about them when we're kids. We just don't really think about where they come, like the rule of thumb, which I've heard a couple different explanations for, certainly.
You can beat your wife with a stick smaller than the circumference of your thumb.
That is one of the things I've heard. I don't remember how true that is or not. I feel like I've heard some other dissenting thing, but the point is that we don't know. I mean, like the brass tacks thing, for example. I remember thinking, they mean TAX, not TACKX. And just... You know what I'm saying?
It's like I say this all the time, but at the same time, we're quoting Shakespeare left and right every day, and his stuff was Yeah. And I'm sure the people back then were like, this crap ain't going to last.
But they should have some new anachronisms that we don't know about.
I agree.
And they should not explain them if the writers are smart.
Much as there are a lot of, like, Sauce for the Goose is one of my favorite lines from Wrath of Khan, which is kind of weird to say because there's, you know what, it's a 300-way tie, Wrath of Khan, for my favorite lines. But and that's an old thing, but I still love it. I love that line.
I had Stratagema, exclamation point. we kind of picked that apart a bit, but I liked the idea of having it. I like the idea of having a game that looks like that and something that we don't understand in that sense.
Yes. Yep.
And something creative, something a little bit more. It's a little bit more creative than, say, what, 3 or 4D chess. What do they call it?
3D chess.
Just 3D chess in Star Trek. And that too is interesting, but at the same time, it is very much that kind of rooted in that thing. I mean, whether it even translates to actually just 3-dimensional chess as opposed to something more complicated.
It's funny you say that, Keith, because my alternate episode would be a 3D chess tournament. But I do appreciate them because I spend every week busting on them for not coming up with something new. So I agree with you, though. It is obviously we're interested in it. We want to know more about this game. But
right.
I have a feeling we're never going to see it again.
No, I don't think we do.
Maybe we should write some Trek fiction, and we'll fill in the rest of the cracks.
You do that, I'll release it as a bonus episode.
Perfect.
We can put in Sonia Gomez and everything, and
Dr. Seelar.
Just like the I guess the ghost of her that's in this episode. She's just kind of in the background, and
Can I have Salar take
her.
on Kalar in a 3D chess tournament?
Yes.
Now we got something. All right.
Yes.
I'm writing that down.
Yeah, my alternate episode is just I want to see the end of the Picard Riker face-off, personally. Yeah. Fashion. Not really much here, just the alien outfit that he was wearing. Was fine. I thought it was a good alien design.
Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of Paul Dooley's Cardassian character that we'll get to. But nothing, I mean, he's a different alien, so it's a little bit different. I did notice, and I don't know if we've talked about this before, but we might have. It's still weird to me that Troy's uniform doesn't have her rank pips on it, while everybody else's has their pips.
What would the rank of a counselor be?
Well, she is I believe she's a commander, or she might be a lieutenant commander, but will be promoted to commander throughout the course of the series. So she'd either have the 2 solid and 1 hollow, or 3 solid pips. I don't know if that's a typical counselor rank, but that's Troy's rank in Starfleet. So she is a ranked officer. She's not a non-commissioned or anything.
Okay. I mean, do they rank doctors?
Yes, Pulaski and Crusher were both full commanders with 3 pips.
I was going to say,
I never noticed that.
I rank Crusher above Pulaski. I thought that's what you meant by do they rank the men.
I was going to comment in next week's episode, and I'll just talk about now, and we won't talk about next week because it's not that important. But I noticed O'Brien still has the 2 lieutenant pips in next week's episode, so he kept it for the whole season 2, which still bothers me because he's the non-commissioned chief later on.
Right.
So that bothers me, but I guess there's some non-canon backstory of how he was a lieutenant and then decided to unenlist but still be on the ship with a non-commissioned rank. Whatever.
I was going to say, is it possible he got busted down to that? He did something...
Chief's not part of that rank lineup. It's a whole separate thing. It's non-commissioned, yeah.
All right.
So, yeah.
Then maybe he got drunk on a star base or something.
But I won't talk about that next week, although I've got other notes about O'Brien for next week.
Perfect.
This episode was directed by Robert Shearer. This was his second episode of Next Gen he directed. He also directed Measure of a Man, and he directed quite a few more episodes of Next Gen, as well as 1 DS9 and 1 Voyager. So I thought the direction in this episode was good. I don't know. I'm not great at judging direction, though.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't know that I loved it, but this is one of those for me that was just fun. Like I said, I love Balance of Terror. I love the stratagem kind of stuff, and I'm not talking about the game, but I like that part too. It's not what I would say blew me away or anything, but I'd say it's definitely one I liked a lot. I would watch again. It was fun.
Yeah.
So for the last time this season, let's rank Wesley on an annoyance scale of 1 to 10.
Is he not there next week? Oh, wait, He is there next week.
Only in the flashback stuff.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Nope, you're right.
Nothing new. Several characters took the season finale off, but we'll talk about that.
I gave him a 2. I had him at a 3, and then I took him down because I felt like he redeemed himself. He annoyed me early on. I can't remember specifically why, and I can't remember specifically how he redeemed himself. So I settled at a 2.
It's low. I can't remember I just can't remember well enough exactly what he was doing that might have bothered me, if anything. So I'll go a 1. Actually, I mean it was fairly natural. I don't know. It feels like a 1 something. I know that there's that after. It's sort of like what Stephen was saying. There's something lingering. I can't put my finger on it.
So
but
I'm giving him a 3. I'm going to rank more annoying than you two, and I can tell you why and see if that changes.
That might help.
You seem to be jumping around here. it bothered me that he didn't tell anybody what his plan was, and he was all like coy about it. And I get why he wouldn't. Like, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Right.
At the same time, I don't know why he just didn't tell Geordi the truth when he said why he was going back to the ship. Or not that I don't understand why I didn't tell him. He was just a little too smug about it, and a little too, oh, I'm going to trick them all. I'm the smart little ensign.
I'll give you that. I think that is the thing there. Or
I think that's fair.
Yeah, my counter to that would be plausible deniability.
Sure.
For everyone else.
Yeah.
And
Fair.
it's certainly easier to pull something like that off if you don't have to make everybody lie about it.
Make it a conspiracy. Yeah.
Sure. Well, that gives him an average score of 2 if we maintain our 1, 2, 3.
It's got to be a lot better than last week. Was it last week I crucified him?
Last week he wasn't in the episode.
Oh, 2 weeks ago. It must have been 2
2 weeks ago he had a 5.7, which
That was the one.
I would
Man,
actually
is his
like
all-time. Oh no, not quite all-time. All-time of the season.
Yeah.
There's one episode of season 1 that he ranked higher on the
Ensign Joel Savage.
Angel 1. No, Joel wasn't there when
it was okay.
a 6.
you did convince me to move it to a 2 though because of the smugness.
Oh, well, if you're moving it, then he's a 2.3. Steven, who was your annoyance of the episode?
Oh, the guy whose name we can't say came up with.
The alien?
Yeah. Serna.
I'm going to give it a tie, which I've never done before, between the guy looking at the view screen and the blonde woman that acted like she was their best buddy and knew them very well. Both of them felt weird to me. Keith?
I guess I'm going with the obvious choice, the alien, the overseer, the observer, I guess.
Caretaker? No.
Even though we were obviously not supposed to like him, and it was a great payoff of it. Just I love just the rage quit aspect of that scene. Just the whole like, how dare you do this? You're making a mockery of me. That was so satisfying. But
I liked him. I had no problem with him. Crush of Star Trek. Steven, are you switching to Ensign Nagel?
I am. Because it's Kalar. Is that who I'm on right now? Yeah. I think I'm gonna have you send me my whole list for this season because it's gonna be difficult. But yeah, I'm gonna change. But there's still a possibility I'm gonna land on Kalar for the season.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch because I'm that shallow that I liked her and she was blonde.
I'm similar to you, Steven. I'm gonna switch to Nagel, even though she annoyed me a bit, because she was very pretty and I liked her in the scene, and I don't think she's better than Kalar, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm just gonna switch anyway.
It's definitely a thing where I would again, and we say this all the time. There's you always want to see characters again later, and I get why that doesn't happen. It's just not gonna happen. But
I think that doesn't happen too often on this series.
Yeah.
I think like Discovery, they're much less disposable with their small recurring parts. They keep bringing back those characters, which I love, and I wish more Star Trek had done that. It feels like some more recent shows like The Office or Parks and Rec or
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
Scrubs. Scrubs is a great example. Tons of background actors they used for like all 7 seasons.
I think building those worlds and having those, I think it's more of a thing of now. And
DS9 does it, but we'll get.
And
to
I'm
DS9.
looking forward to that.
We'll get to DS9. Keith, Crush.
Kalar, certainly.
Solid choice.
Yep.
Where do we want to rank this episode?
I think it's above the middle.
Yeah, I'm going to say middle to slightly above the middle.
Yeah, that feels like the right spot right here.
I think there were a lot of good bits to it.
Yeah, I'm suffering from recency bias on this, so it's gonna be tough once we really start thinking about with the other ones.
Let's start with the Outrageous Icona, because I actually think that might be a not bad place, because while I liked this as it ended it, and compared to the last episode, there are some things that really bother me about this episode that make me want to push it lower. So, better or worse than Outrageous Icona?
I'd go above.
Okay.
As I said, I just feel above. I mean, there's just. I think the newer episodes are going to have an advantage, not only because we watched more recently, but because the characters are more comfortable by then. I think that's a lot of it.
I will say the characters felt, for the most part, other than I felt the weird recruiting scene, the characters felt more lived in and more established in this episode. Right above that's Unnatural Selection, where Pulaski gets old really quick.
I'm going to go above on that one.
Yeah, it's just
I go above.
what was going on in that?
I'm always surprised that one's as high as it is.
Yeah, that's what.
And when it's not that high.
It's number 13 for the.
All right, out of 20.
right,
out of,
that
out of
middle.
20
Okay.
so far.
So yeah, not that low. No, not that high.
Right above that is the Samaritan Snare.
I'm gonna go higher.
Yeah.
I feel like we're playing the game where the yodeling Swiss man is going
Price
up
is Right.
the Price is Right game, and yeah, at some point.
I'll go higher than Samaritan Snare, but not much higher, honestly.
Okay.
The one above this is Manhunt, where Loxana Troy's in Heat.
Oh, now it's getting tough.
I would put it below Manhunt, personally.
Well, I mean, immediately I'm curious about what's above Manhunt.
The Royale. And I definitely don't think this is as tight as the Royale.
I mean, at this point, we're getting into my own personal preferences for episodes like this.
I think that's where
So
I am too.
it's tough because whether or not it's actually better as opposed to me being more likely to rewatch something like this or want to is different.
Well, the two of you can force it further up, even though this is where I do.
What's above the Royale?
Up the Long Ladder, which is where we had the very futuristic aliens and then the drunk Irish aliens.
Oh wow!
I guess they weren't aliens; they were human settlers.
That was also a fun episode that I was surprised I liked as much as I did.
Right.
See, I think that's for me. Up the Long Ladder and the Royale are both so much fun, and this one, while it had fun moments, disappointed
Not
on
as
all
much.
fronts for me. So that's where I'd put it further. Like I said, I'd put it below Manhunt too, but that's
It's close to Manhunt, I guess. If I'm really pulling back and thinking about it, it just.
Jimmy, I think you've talked me into at least probably above Manhunters as far as I go.
okay.
Like the Royale was a solid episode. I know
so solid,
I didn't like the premise or any of it, but it was still
so solid. And I think everything above the
don't know.
Royale, like I said, Up the Long Ladder had an ending I wasn't totally thrilled with, but I think everything above the Royale is pretty damn solid this season. It's just been a great season.
what's above up the long ladder. We'll keep playing this game.
The top of the ladder.
Oh, the Icarus factor. Yeah.
Where
That's kinda
Riker's
funny.
Father.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. I'm off in the weeds on this. I think I'm just gonna have to let it stay down there near Manhunt. Royale just it's not holding up in my memory. I mean, I think I probably had more problems with it than you two. If I don't really recall if we got into that, but just something.
I know I liked it more than I thought I would, and I think with this one right now, I'm definitely, like you said, Keith. I think I'm focusing on the things I liked about it because I didn't take a ton of notes, which that could go either way actually.
Right.
But
So are we good with above Manhunt but below the Royale?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
Yeah,
good compromise. It just something.
unless somebody strongly thinks it should be above the Royale, I think I'm okay there. Because I would probably have had it. I probably would have had it
down
level
one
there.
more, honestly. I think Keith would have gone up at least one more.
So it's perfect right there.
Yeah, yep. There we go. There it is. Yeah. Nobody's happy, so it's a good place.
So it's number 11 of 21. It's right in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
where it's gonna end at number 11 because I will fight you if you go above this.
I don't
I will
know.
fight you hard.
I'm reserving judgment until I see this next episode.
Spoiler alert! I could argue the finale belongs at the bottom, but we'll get there next week.
Yeah, well, now my expectations are low, so who knows? It may rise above them.
Jimmy's just sabotaged himself by making your expectations that low.
Next week, Shades of Grey. Commander Riker comes down with a dangerous alien infection, and the only way to treat it may be through reliving his memories or scenes that he didn't actually live through, but for some reason they played the clips of anyway.
I'll say Shades of
Come back
Grey,
next week.
great monkey song. So now I'm even more excited to see this thing. I can't wait. I'm going to
not
watch
right.
it as soon as we're done with this. I'm going to go watch it.
I went with the erotic torture thing. It kind of fits.
Well, maybe that'll be right on the money as far as torture, but we'll see when I watch it.
Okay, so come back next week. We'll do the final episode of season 2, and then the week after that we'll recap the whole season. So more goodness to come. On another, It's All Been Tricked Before. Until then, live long.
And prosper. And don't play data. Don't play data in a game of strategy. No.
Always play to tie.
Title of my sex tape.
No, that would be that's
That's
a
actually
good
a pretty good Oh,
That's an advice
I'll
book
look
right
for
there.
that. It's All Been Done presents.
Who's got the time?